Hello and welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm gonna be using D5 Render to achieve a wonderful render of this classical duplex model. So basically, I'm a REVIT user, but D5 Render is also compatible with various other modeling softwares, including SketchUp, Rhinoceros, Blender, ArchiCAD, 3ds Max, and so much more. So basically what I'm going to be showing you in this tutorial is going to be universal for all modeling software, although there will be slight differences here and there in the importing stage. But aside from that, everything is universal and you can work with this video despite the modeling software you are using. So the next question is, what is D5? D5 Render is a real-time rendering software that uses ray tracing rendering engine. With D5 Render, you can achieve a realistic output, whether image or animation, within a short period of time. D5 Render is fast and it gives good output and is also good for animation, so it's a software you should look forward to using. So before we move on, I would like you to do us a favor by hitting the like button, subscribe to this channel for more content like this. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to get notified once we release new videos, because we do that on a weekly basis. And some of you just come to this our channel, you watch videos but maybe you forget to subscribe. So I just want to use this opportunity to kindly remind you to subscribe to our channel. It benefits you and it benefits us. So with that out of the way, let's jump right into the main content of this video. Alright, as you can see, this is our project in REVIT. This is a classical duplex. I did a full course on how to model this duplex in REVIT, so if you're interested in that, you could go and check it out. The link will be in the description below as well. So now you can see this duplex. We want to render this in D5 Render. So the first thing to do is we're going to click on this tab here to make sure we set a pivot point. So we're just going to click on this center and drag this thread to this point here. So once we've dragged this, it means this will be the center pivot point. So we're going to make sure we close this with X and make sure we close it so it won't be visible when we export it. So now this is at the center and we can rotate it from this axis in REVIT by clicking on this box here to rotate it. So now the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be hiding all the furnitures and the plumbing fixtures. So we're going to make the export as light as possible. To do that, we are first going to use HH to temporarily hide these obstructing components of this building. I'll click on it. I'll just click HH. I'll do the same for these walls here, HH. Then I'm going to select this bed, for instance. I'm going to right click and I'm going to click on hide in view by category. Okay, so now I've done this, I'm going to go to this convenience space. I'm going to click on this wall, type HH so it won't obstruct. I'm going to select this WC, right click, hide in view by category. So it's going to hide all the plumbing fixtures. So now I'm done with hiding the furnitures and the plumbing fixtures. I'm going to type HR to undo the temporary hide. So all these wall components I temporarily hid before will appear again. So I think this project is now a little bit light, so we are good to export. So usually I will have created some fences around this model, but I don't want to do that because I have a classical fence I want to use in D5 Render. So let's export. To export, if you have installed the D5 Render REVIT Live Sync, this D5 Render icon will appear on your REVIT interface. So once it appears, you could use it to export or even live sync your model direct to D5 Render. So I'm just going to click on this D5 Render icon. I preferably export because of some future reference issues, so I prefer exporting to .d5a file. So that's what we're going to do for this video. So I'm just going to click on this export tab. Now you're going to see some options. So basically I don't recommend using all these survey points because this is just a simple render, so I just leave everything checked off. Then I'm just going to increase this export smoothness, because this export smoothness directly affects the quality of the export. So all the smooth lines will be smooth, all the straight lines will be straight. So I'm just going to click on export. Now D5 is going to give us option to go to our file explorer and select exactly where we want to place our exported file. So now I'm just going to create a new folder and I'm going to call this 01 exports. So now I've created this, I'm just going to double click on it and I'm going to name this 01 classical duplex. Okay, so now I'm done. I'm just going to click on save. So depending on how heavy the file is, it will take more time to export. If it's a lighter file, it will take lesser time to export. If it's heavier, it will take more time. Alright, so now the model has exported. We can now open D5 and we can minimize this REVIT folder. So now this is D5 interface. So this is where you need to create a new file. You can use this to open a previously opened file. This will show you the recent files you've worked on. So as you can see the recent files I've worked on. So this workflow, you can see some workflow live sync where you can download the live sync even from your D5 Render app and all. So you can click on this explore all these demo scenes and all this exploring stuff you do. So you can also use here to update your D5. If you want to log in, you can log in here, but I don't need to log in. You can go to this help center if you're having issues with D5 Render. So this is just basically this. For this video, I'm just going to click on new to open a new D5 file. Okay, so now D5 is open. You can see the whole D5 interface. So as we are working through this project, you are going to see what all these tabs are used for. Okay, so now we want to import the model we exported from Revit. To do that, I'm just going to click on this icon here and I'm going to click on import. So under this import, you are going to give us option to go to our file explorer again. So we are going to locate where we kept the D5 render file we exported exactly. Alright, so now we've located it. We're just going to click on it and we're going to click on open. So under here, we're going to go to this tab here. We're going to see a folder called imported and this called object. So this imported represents all the things you imported from outside D5. So once I click on it and it loads completely and I just place it here. So if I go to this object tab, I'm going to see it. So this model only appears in this object tab once I've placed it in D5 interface. So if it wasn't in D5 interface, for instance, if I delete it, you're not going to see it in the object tab again. So I'm going to click on imported once more and I'm going to click on it to load into the D5 project. So now I'm going to place it. So now I want to talk about navigation in D5 render. So navigation in D5 render is pretty simple. You have two options. To access those options, you can go to this tab here. So under this tab, you can choose to orbit. Orbit means that you have a focal point and you move in an orbital manner by simply right clicking on your keyboard. So if I right click, I'm going to right click on any point, move my mouse icon to any point here, right click, and I'm going to move in an orbital manner to that point. As you can see, you can also have the option of changing this movement option from orbital to fly. Okay, for this fly, you have some options here. You could increase the height of your viewpoint, the height of where you want to fly from, and you could increase the speed. So this height gives you freedom to move like a ghost. For instance, if I right click now and you could see I could change the direction of my view. If I right click, then if I use the scroll icon on my mouse, I could just scroll in and scroll out. So if I rotate here, if I want to go to this fountain at this center point, for instance, I can look at this point here. I could focus my view on this point, then zoom in here, focus again, then zoom in here. So this just gives you options to move in a dynamic manner in D5 render. So I noticed something now, that this import actually has an issue. So the issue of this import is that it didn't come in with caps and we want to rectify it. How are we going to do this? We're going to go back to our Revit model. Once you go back to our Revit model, we are just going to do whatever corrections we want to do. In the case of this correction, I want to add some more curves. So I'm just going to click on this curve, add more segments, and I'm just going to add some curves to this portion here. So once I'm done with this, I'm going to click on export again. I'm going to click on export. I'm going to click on this D5 render file we exported before. Then I'm going to click on save and I'm going to override it and replace it. Then I'm going to go back to D5. Note, before I do anything, I'm going to make sure, if I go back to Revit, I'm going to make sure that the model has completely exported. So I'm going to make sure that this model has completely exported. As you can see, it has not exported, so I'm just going to wait a bit for it to completely export. So let's go back to D5 and be working on other things while it's exporting. We have this our file here and I want to place some fences because I usually place fences before I start picking views in D5 render. The fences have a great influence on the views I want to pick. So for this fence, I'm going to go to my assets. Under this asset, I'm going to go to the local library. So in asset, you have option to choose between the online and the local library. This local library, if you install D5 for the first time, it will be empty, but over long usage of D5, I've filled my local library with a lot of components, and I'll also be sharing this component. The link will be in the description below, although it will cost a little token, but it's just a way of saying thank you to the channel and a way of supporting the channel. So I'm going to be leaving the full D5A models of all I'll be using in this project, from all the components to the main model of this building. So just check that out in the description below. Okay, so we're going to go under these models, because under the local we can choose between materials and model. You can store both materials and models in your local library. So under this model, I'm just going to go to outdoor fence. So now I'm just going to bring in a D5 fence unit I want to use. I'm just going to bring this in. All right, so as you can see now, you can see this classical fence I modeled before. So as I said before, I'll be leaving this in the description below, so you can also use for your classical buildings and you can follow this tutorial very well. So I'm just going to be placing this here and I'm going to be copying this in repetitions. So I'm just going to hold shift. Okay, so now about models in D5 render, let me just take time to explain this. So if you click on a model in D5 render, for instance, you click on this fence model, you are going to see some things here. These things are like some directions. These directions actually signify the way you can move this model. For instance, if I click on this red dimension, I can move it at this axis. If I click on this green arrow, I can move it on this axis. If I click on this blue arrow, I can move it on this axis. If I click on this white box in the middle, I could move it on any 3D plane I desire and move. If I also click on this yellow circle here, I could use it to move it dynamically on the horizon, and I could use this red one to move it dynamically on this axis. The same with this blue one dynamically on this axis. So this gives you full control over the movement of your model in D5 Render. So if you understand these tools, you will not have any issue with movement. So we're just going to click on this white box and place it here. So now we are going to go to another kind of view. To access the orthographic view in D5 Render, you could just click T on your keyboard. So this orthographic view will enable us to have a better view of how we are going to place the fence in this D5 Render project. So I'm going to be clicking on this arrow here. Once I click on this arrow and hold shift and drag it, I'm going to make a duplicate of this fence. So I'm going to duplicate it to this point. I'm going to hold Control to select both of them. I could still duplicate, hold shift again and duplicate both of them at the same time. The same thing, I'm going to hold Control here, hold Control here as well, hold Control here, and I'm going to hold shift and duplicate this too and just drag this here. Okay, so I'm going to click on this and I'm also going to duplicate this, and I'm just going to make sure I fill up this whole place. So now we have created one line of fence. Instead of stressing ourselves and trying to manually select this end project, we could just go to this object tab and we could see all the fences we've placed. So what we are going to do is I'm just going to click on this first fence. I'm going to go down over here. I'm going to hold shift and I'm just going to click on this to select all of them. So now I've selected all of them. I could just right click and I could just click on group. Okay, so now I've grouped them. I'm just going to hold shift and I'm just going to drag all of them as a group and place it here. So instead of copying it individually. So now I have a little issue now. I'll still want to right click and ungroup this for now. Why did I want to do it? I wanted to still make another copy of this fence individually, this fence unit individually. So I'm just going to hold shift. It's just a fast way of doing it. Then once I hold shift and separate this one, I'm going to click on this. I'm going to hold Control, click on this, and I'm going to go down here, hold shift, click on this, and I'm going to right click and group it again. Okay. So if you notice, these fences are not aligning perfect sometimes, but it's okay as far as it's not really obstructing any view. So the same, I'm going to do this. I'm going to now manually select all of this now, just so I can group it so it will be easy to hide in future. So now I'm just going to right click and I'm going to group them now. So now I've grouped this, I now have some level of freedom here. So I'm also going to click on this and I'm going to make another copy to create the fences in front of this building. So I'm going to copy this, I'm going to rotate this, and I'm going to just try and place it accordingly. So sometimes it mustn't be all perfect, but let's just see how similar we can create. So we could also go to the assets and we could go to this local library, and I want to place a gate. So I'm going to be placing this right gate. This is a model I modeled before, so I'm also going, it's part of the things I'm going to be sharing. So now I think we're good with this orthographic view. We can click on P to return back to our perspective view. So you could see how all the fences we copied are looking, which is good. So now let's just place this gate appropriately and see how it's good. So okay, back to what I did earlier. Remember I talked about exporting the Revit file again. So now the file is exported. If we go back to Revit, we could just see that it's no more exporting again. So I think the file is completely exported. So we're just going to click on this model here and we're going to go over to this tab here. We're going to go over here and we're just going to click on reload and we're going to click confirm. So this is going to sort of update the file to what we currently exported from Revit. Alright, so now the file has exported and updated. You could see that this thing we had issue with has been rectified and the update has been applied. So that is how good D5 Render is, and that is why I preferably use exporting and reloading instead of live syncing. Because after some months, if you come back to this file, sometimes I used to notice some issues with the live sync. So I prefer exporting and reloading. Personally. So now I'm just going to try and place this gate. You could increase the size. If you click on any model in D5 Render, you could look at these options here. These options here will enable you edit the position, and you could increase the size of these models. For instance, this gate, you could see the axis, the size on this axis is 2100 millimeters, and that is in metric system. So I'm just going to change it to 2700. So now I've changed it, you could see the gate is now bigger. So we are going to click on this and we are going to do the same. We are going to change this to 2700. Okay, so as you can see, this our gate is looking good, and I think we are ready to group them together. So now this whole fence unit, I'm just going to select them individually. I'm going to select this, hold Control, select this. I'm just going to make sure I select this, then I'm going to right click and I'm going to group it. Okay, I think we're pretty much good. So I think we are done with the importing of the models into D5 Render. Alright, so before we start creating our camera shots, we are going to click Ctrl S to make sure we save this project, because if you don't save this, all your progress will be meaningless. So we're just going to go, once we click on Ctrl S, it's going to give us option to select the location where we want to save the project file at. So I'm just going to locate it. So now we have gotten the location, we are going to give the file a name. Let me call it Classical Duplex. And I'm just going to click on save to make sure I save the project. So now we're done saving, we're going to start picking camera shots. So the first thing to do is I want to pick a camera shot from this region. Okay, so everything I'm going to be working on while picking the camera shot is going to be pertaining to this region I want to pick from. So firstly, I'm going to click on this fence unit. If you remember, we didn't group them, so I'm just going to click on this. I'm going to hold shift and select this. Okay, click on this, then scroll down, hold shift and select this. Then I'm just going to right click and group it. Okay, so now this group together, I could easily hide it and it will not cause me any issue. So I'm just going to click on this. Once I click on it, I'm going to go to this object tab. I'm going to see it highlighted in this object tab. So I'm just going to click on this eye icon to just hide it. Then I'm going to click on this as well. I'm going to click on this eye icon to hide it as well. So this place is clear for us to pick our shot. It doesn't mean that those two fence units are deleted, because if you go and click on this eye icon again, they will appear again. It just means they are hidden in this view. So I'm just going to hide it again. So now I've done that, I'm going to start working on this shot. So it's important that once you are picking a perspective shot, one important element of picking perspective is balance. So when your balance, you want to try and make sure that the content of this image here is equal to the content of this image here. So you are not getting too much environment or too much sky, and the perspective isn't one-sided. At least that's my own personal belief. Alright, so to control this better, you could go to this camera option here. Under this camera option, you are going to see this tab here to control your view angle. Let's say we change it to, I recommend somewhere 75 as a starting point. So once we click on 75, you could go back to this movement icon here and you could reduce the speed of movement, because when we are picking good perspective views, we'll need our camera movement to be slow so we can just get it at the right spot. Okay, before I start using any setting like 2-point perspective, I always try to get a genuinely good perspective without any adding 2-point perspective setting. So I'm just going to try and go and try and see how I can get a very nice perspective view. So it's always good to note too that while creating perspective, you should always look at the content of your background as a factor while choosing your perspective. So for instance, you'll be able to get a good place where you can see some nice greenery as well as some landscape and some landscape features. It's just for you to be able to see the best aspect of your image or the best aspect of your model. So let's go somewhere here. Okay, so now we are somewhere here. This building is looking a bit too far, and I want to raise the camera up so I'll see more of this point here. Then once I raise it up, I'm going to try and balance it here. But still, I'm going to go to this camera shot. I'm going to change it to 70 degree. So I'm going to be seeing more component of this building. So I'm still going to be trying and moving to this region because I want to see more of this side. Just going to move it side by side. Okay, so now I think it's time to add the 2-point perspective setting. Now I think we have gotten to a relatively good position. To add the 2-point perspective setting, you're just going to click on F8 on your keyboard. So this F8 on your keyboard automatically forces a straight perspective without it being genuinely straight. So it's just a setting that could help you get the kind of render effect you want to get. So let's just say we place this view somewhere here. Okay, I think this is a good view. Okay, somewhere here. So now we've created this perspective view, which I think is decent. I'm just going to move to the right a bit. I'm just going to go over here and I'm going to click on this create new scene. So now we've created this new scene. We're now going to start working on this new scene and working it till we get a very realistic render. Alright, so the next aspect we are going to be going into is the material application. So before we start applying materials, if you try to move in and move out, let's increase the speed of our camera movement. If you try to move in and move out, you notice that we cannot move away from this point. And the reason why is that this our 2-point perspective actually restricts us from moving anyhow. So to exit the 2-point perspective setting, I'm just going to click on P. So once I click on P, I'm going to exit the 2-point perspective setting. Okay, so now for the materials, we are going to go to assets. Under this asset, we are going to go to online, and we are going to go to our online asset library. So under this online, you are going to see materials, you are going to see models, we are going to see particle, HDRI, but we are going to start from materials. So we are going to see an option of different kind of materials in their different categories. So let's start from walls. So under these walls, we are going to go to wall paint, and we are going to select a simple wall paint for this our wall paint here. So I'm just going to scroll down till I see simple wall paint. Okay, so this is the white simple wall paint, and I'm just going to place it here. So now I've placed it, you could see that it's not actually white. So we're just going to click on escape, we're going to close this, and we're going to click on I to access the material editor, and we're just going to select it. So now under these tabs here, you could see a lot of stuff to work on. So now we are going to start from this color by clicking on this icon here. So under this color, I want to change it towards somewhere between cream. So I'm just going to change the hue towards brown a bit. Then I'm just going to move this color towards the creamish side. Let's just put it at this point. I still want it to be white, but just a bit of cream. Okay, so now this is done. We are going to reduce this specular because we don't need it to be reflective. I'm going to increase the roughness. I'm also going to go over here and I'm going to turn on this triplanar setting. And one important thing to turn on is this round corner settings. To do that, you could just see this round corner option here. I'm just going to click on it and check it. What this does is that this kind of bevels the edge, because in real life it's very difficult for you to see a building like this that has perfectly sharp edges. So we're just going to increase it. So by beveling the edges, you're increasing the realism. So now you can see the color is cream and it's coming out quite good. So we're going to click on this color and we're just going to go over here. So once we click on this color, we are going to see this option, duplicate. So once we click on duplicate, we could duplicate it to another part of this model. So let's just say we place it here in this color. If, as you can see from the way I imported into Revit, I wanted a different material to be on this part of this model. So I'm going to click on I again to access the material editor. I'm going to click on this since it's a separate material, and I'm just going to click on this tab here, and I'm going to be making it towards the more creamy end. So I want to make it creamy a bit more towards brown. Okay, I think this is good. So as you can see, we have applied 2 basic wall paints now. So now we want to go to other kind of wall paints. So I'm going to go to assets. Under this wall paint, I want to look for a rough wall paint. So I'm just going to go to this white rough wall paint, and I'm going to click it and place it on all these conics. So as you can see, this white rough wall paint is not actually white, so we're going to work on it. So I'm going to click on I to access the material editor. I'm going to go to this base color, make sure it's white. Going to go to this base color map here. This base color, once I click on this base color map, is another option. Click on this icon here, then I'm just going to click on this white hue here to about 22. Then I'm going to go back to this base color. I'm going to turn on this triplanar setting. I'm also going to turn on this round corner setting, so it will bevel the edges as well. So all of them will be too sharp. The only thing is I will reduce the radius since I want the conic having intricate details. Or I think it's better off without it. The conics, the beauty of the conics is its sharpness and accuracy. Then I'm going to click on it. Okay, I still feel it's not white enough. Then I'm still going to go back to this base color map, increase this again to make sure it's as white as possible. So now I'm done with this. I could click on this material I applied here. I could click on copy, duplicate, and I'm going to copy it and place it on this railings here, these classical railings. Okay, I did a video on classical railings, so you could also check that out. So now we are done with this basic wall. I want this wall paint here, this dark wall paint. I want to use some tyrolean materials. D5 have some good tyrolean lookalike materials, but there is a specific one I want to use which is not inside D5. And how are we going to do it? These materials can be gotten by downloading the images. So if I click on I now and click on this material editor, so I could just go to this base color map here, and I could just click on this icon here. This icon will now give me the opportunity to select an image I want, and I look for this tyrolean image now, and I click on it and I click OK. So as you can see, you could see the tyrolean texture will come out here and it's looking good. So we'll now go back to this base color map and we could edit the color. So I'm just going to make it lighter a bit, and you can see that this is looking good. I'm still going to make it lighter. I'm just going to, let's say, make it a bit more lighter. Okay, so now I think it's Okay, this is too light. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to increase it. Okay, just a bit. I think this is good. Then I'm just going to click on copy and I'm just going to copy it to these other dark materials here and copy it here. So as you can see, this is looking good. You can see how the materials are entering well. So now the next aspect I want to work on is the glass materials. So to work on glass materials, you could select it by, you could create glass materials by either two ways. The first way is to click on I and go to this material editor. Since we imported it as glass, D5 render automatically make it a glass. So we could just go by over here. We could reduce this thing and change it towards white so it won't be tinted. We could increase the specular nature. We could increase the transparency, and we could just reduce this normal to 0. And that is, we have basically created a simple glass. Or we could go to this material library as well. Under this material library, we could go to glass. So under this glass, you are going to see an array of glasses. We could just use normal glass. Let's scroll up, click on this normal glass and apply it here. Then this is a normal glass. So if you click on I, we could still edit this normal glass. We could reduce this roughness, increase the specularness, that is the reflectiveness, change the color or distance and tint it a bit depending on what we want. We could also click on copy and copy it to other glass materials. For instance, these curtain wall panels here will make sure everything is unified. Okay, so now we are done with the glass. We want to talk about metals and this munion. Okay, to apply metallic material is still the same two ways you can apply glass materials. We are going to click on I, we are going to select this. So we could go over here, we could reduce this roughness. So once we reduce this roughness, it starts showing this reflective metallic luster of this material. We could reduce the metallicness of this material. We could also go to this triplanar settings. We could check this on. We could check this round corner so it won't be looking sharp and edgy. So we could just increase the roughness so it won't be too reflective. We could go over to this base color, reduce the darkness so it won't be too dark. And once we are done with that, we could click on it and we could just copy it and copy it to this inner munion. And we could, let's say we could click on this inner munion, edit it and make it lighter. So we have applied metallic materials. Okay, so now we can look at this ceiling material. So for this ceiling, I want it to be a bit reflective. So I could select this ceiling material. I could reduce the roughness simply. I could just make sure the ceiling is pure white, go to this base color. And okay, there's no base color map. We could click on this, increase the specularness of the ceiling, increase the metallic nature so it will reflect just a bit, and it's going to give us what we want. So as you can see, we have a LED light in this ceiling and we want to apply materials on this LED light. To do that, we are just going to click on this eye icon. Once it's activated, we could select multiple materials with it. Click on it. Under this tab, we're going to scroll down. Under this tab, we're going to see emissive and we're going to check this emissive one. We're now going to impute an intensity value of this emissive. Let's say we impute 50 and the light will increase. You could see it's more intense. Then we now go to this temperature. We could select temperature instead of color and make it warm light. Okay, so that is how to make emissive material light in D5 render. So now we are just going to go and apply materials on this floor now. To do that, we'll go to this asset library. We are going to go under ceramic tile to get some nice floor tiles. So we're just going to use this jazz white tile and we're going to select it here. So as usual, we're going to click escape I. We are going to open the material editor. We're going to turn on this triplanar setting. We're going to turn on this round corner so it will not have two sharp edges, and I think it's good to go. Okay, so now let's talk about the roofs. To access roof materials, you could go back to D5 library, of course. We could now look for under this roof material, and most of these roof materials are, you can access it with the pro version, but for this video we're just using the non-pro version so everybody can follow along to an extent at least. So we're going to select this roof tiles and we're just going to assign it here. So now once we've assigned it, you could see how it's coming in well. We could just click on I to edit it. Let's say I want to make it a bit lighter, just lighter a bit. Then I'm going to select this and I'm just going to click on copy and copy this and place it on this ridge cap. I could just make the ridge cap a bit darker just to highlight it. I could make the ridge cap a little bit darker so it will highlight. So you could always click on this, close this, and once we click on this scene 1 again, we are going to go back and our view will be updated with all the material applications we've made. So I'm going to hit Ctrl S to make sure I save it. Okay, so we are still applying some more material because we want to apply materials on these floors and create green areas. So I'm going to click on P to exit this 2-point perspective setting, and I'm going to start working on the site features. So firstly, I want to start with this stamped concrete. To do that, we are going to go under assets. We are going to go to concrete because concrete have their own option here. Okay, let's just use let's try this one. So let me try this rough concrete and I'm going to place it here. Okay, so I think the rough concrete came out well. We could click I to edit it a bit. Then I'm just going to select it. Sometimes it hangs and lags, so just bear that in mind. So I'm just going to turn on this triplanar setting on, and I'm going to try and go to this base color and make sure the concrete is a bit lighter. So I'm just going to go to this base color map, click on this icon, increase the lightness a bit because I don't want the concrete to be too dark. So I now want to apply concrete. Maybe I could now use this rough concrete on these curbs here. So once I use it on these curbs, I'm going to click on I to edit it, select it, turn on this triplanar, so it will be looking dynamic in nature. I'm also going to turn on this round corner settings just to make sure everything is good. So now we want to apply some materials on this outdoor interlock. So to do that, we're going to go under outdoor here. So once we go to outdoor ground, we are going to click on floor tiles. We could click on floor tiles, we could click on cobblestone, we could even click on asphalt. So let's start with these floor tiles and see if we could get some nice tiles and paving here. So I think we should start with this tile here. So I'm going to use this exterior paving and I'm going to use it and select here. So as you can see, this paving is very dark, but I want to edit it and make it light. So I'm going to click on I, I'm going to select it, I'm going to make sure it's whiter. I'm going to go to this base color map. I'm going to increase the lightness. Okay, just a bit. I'm going to touch it a bit. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this base color map. I'm going to reduce the AO. This AO, I'm going to leave the roughness and the height quite high. Okay, I'm going to reduce this height so it won't be looking too rough. So now this is done. I could go and select another paving material, and I could just exterior paving. I could just select it and place it. Okay, so now another thing I want to work on this material is I'm going to click on I. The thing I want to work on is the scale. So to edit the scale, you could go over to this UV tab here. You could now go to this stretch and you could just drag it or reduce it. So if I reduce the value, it means the scale will increase. So let's say I reduce the value to about 0.327. And I think this value is pretty good. Then I'm just going to select this as well. I'm going to edit this second. Okay, let me go to this side where it's broader. So I'm going to select it. I'm going to reduce this metallic nature. I'm going to leave the AO high. I'm going to go to this base color map and make it lighter. I'm going to go to this base color map here, and I'm just going to click on this tab and make it just a bit lighter so it won't be too much. Then I'm going to click on this, and okay, I think this is pretty good. So let me just, okay, somewhere here. I'm going to go back to this base color map. I'm going to dim it a bit so it won't be too saturated. So as you can see, I think the color is now good. It's not too shouty and it's all right. So now we want to start working on this green area. Okay, but before we work on green area, I want to work on this fountain now. So this fountain also contains green area, but I want to apply some nice fountain tiles, and I'm going to show you how to convert this fountain material to water, because this material was intended to be water. So let's start from these tiles. We are going to go under these wall tiles now. Okay, wall tiles. Let's just click on wall tiles. So now we've selected wall tiles. We are going to look for a nice pool tile for this fountain tile I want to use. Okay, let me try this white marble hexagonal. Okay, so I'm just going to click on this and I'm going to place this here. So now I've placed this here, I could click on I on my keyboard. I could select this and I could just go and touch some of these settings, including the triplanar setting. Okay, this triplanar setting just offset. Let's just turn it off. Click on this and we're going to turn on this round corner settings. Okay, so now I'm going to go under this ceramic tile and see if I'm going to see some nice tile for this pool that I could use for this fountain. Alright, so I'm going to be using this blue mosaic tiles, which is kind of aligning with the tiles I intended to use on Revit. So I'm going to select it and place it here. Okay, so now I've placed it. I'm going to click on I on my keyboard and I'm going to select it. I'm going to edit some basic parameters. Remember the round corner setting, the triplanar setting, so it will be looking good and alright. So now let's edit the material of this water and convert this to water in D5 render. So I'm just going to click on I to access the material editor and I'm just going to select this material. So once I've selected this material, I'm going to go to this material template and I'm going to change it to water. The water is actually moving, but we have not yet set the display in dynamic. So once I go to display and you go and make sure and you set it in dynamic, you are going to see that the water will now be moving. Okay, so now we could edit some things, the parameters of this water material. We could select it. Once we select it, if we increase this normal, you are going to see the wave height of the water will increase. If I increase it more, you are going to see it's going to increase. So let's just leave it at this level. Since it's a fountain, I assume the wave. So I can increase the flow velocity and it will be moving very fast, and I could reduce the flow velocity depending on how I want to use it. I could turn on this caustic. This caustic is like bubbles, but yes, it's actually good. I could still work on the depth of this pool. If I increase the depth, it will be looking darker. Then if I reduce the depth, it will be clear. So I think the depth is okay the way it is. So now I want to apply materials on this green area. So to apply materials on the green area, there are pretty much different ways to use it. For instance, if I go to this green area here, I click on I to access my material editor. I select this green area. I could easily go to this material template and I'm going to change it to grass. So once I change it to grass, it's going to generate the grass and you're going to see some 3D grass. This is actually good, but I'll not suggest it or recommend it as the best way to create realistic grass in D5 Render. To create realistic grass in D5 Render, there is another method. Let's change this back to custom. So we are going to go under this asset. We are going to go to this material library and we are going to go to this natural raw materials. So once we're in this natural raw materials, we are going to look for this dry deciduous woodland. And once we click on dry deciduous woodland, we are just going to select it and place it here. We're also going to place it here again because we are going to be doing similar things to this other green area. We're going to place it here. So now we have placed all of this here. We are now going to go to model. So under this model, we are going to go under nature and click on this drop down icon. Under nature, we are now going to go to this ornamental grass. Okay, so under this ornamental grass, we are going to just click on this icon here, this brush icon here. So under this brush icon, the first thing to do is to increase the radius to the max. Okay, we are going to increase this density to around here, and we are going to select a particular green area. Preferably, I'm going to start with this grass cluster. Okay, then let me just reduce the density a bit so it won't be too heavy. Then I'm going to reduce this size to about here. I'm going to increase this random size to about here. Then once I do that, I'm just going to carry this. You're going to see something like a bucket of paint, and it's just going to place this and brush here. I'm going to do that for this green area too, and I'm going to do that for this green area too. Okay, so now we have done this. We are still going to work more on this. So I'm going to uncheck this green area here, and I'm going to select this one now. Then I'm going to reduce the density of this one to about here, and I'm going to do the same thing here, do the same thing here, do the same thing here. Okay, this is looking pretty good, but we are still not there yet. So I'm going to uncheck this again. Then I'm now going to go back to this, select another green area. Let's say I select this one now. Now I'm going to reduce the density by far, and I'm just going to reduce the size a bit. Okay, make sure the size is within check somewhere here. Increase reduce this. Okay, leave this random size. Then I'm just going to do this here. I'm also going to do this here. I'm going to do this here. So as you can see, we are forming a real complex green area, and this is looking good. Okay, so we could do some more. We could just add some more other type of green area. We could select this one too. Make sure the size is small so it won't be too shouty. Select it. Okay, and if you want to delete it, for instance, I'm not too feeling this one I just recently placed, I could just click on this erase icon, increase the radius, and erase everything here, and erase everything. For instance, I feel the first green area we created is too scanty, so I could just minus to remove that green area. I could go back to that first green area we selected. I could just click on it. I think this is it. Check it, and I could just click on it to clear everything here. So once I've cleared it, I could go back again and click on place to start placing it. Now I'm going to increase the density more so it will be more clustered and it will look more rich, and I'm just going to place it here. But note that the more dense it is, the heavier it is on your system. So I'm going to do the same here, and I'm going to do the same here. So you see it's already lagging because this is already becoming heavy and it's taking some time to process. So as you can see, we have applied a lot of material. We could also do the same. I even forgot to do it for this particular green area, but we are still going to do that shortly. So let's just quickly do it. I'm going to go to assets, going to go to material library first. I'm going to go to natural raw material. Then I'm just going to go to deciduous dry woodland, and I'm going to place this here. Okay, then I'm just going to go to model. I'm going to go to nature, ornamental grass. I'm going to go to brush. I'm now going to select the brush, the plant I want to brush. Then I'm just going to place it here. So as you can see, the same thing applies for here. I could also still select even this cluster here, this grass cluster. I could reduce the density, increase the size a bit, and I could just place this one here too. Place it here and place it here. Okay, so I think I'll click on escape. Alright, so I'm also going to edit this background material. To do that, I'm going to go under assets. I'm going to go under this natural raw materials. Under this natural raw materials, I'm going to select grass gravel. So once I select this grass gravel, I'm just going to place it. Then I'm going to click escape. I'm going to click I to edit it to access the material editor. Once I click on it, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the scale, increase the scale by reducing the value. Once the scale is somewhat at this point, I'm going to click on this base color map. This base color. Then I'm going to click on this white. I'm going to change the hue towards brownish green. Then I'm just going to reduce the tint so it won't be too bright. So now that is done, I'm going to apply material on this asphalt. So to apply material on the asphalt, I'm simply going to go to outdoor floor. Let me go to look for outdoor ground. Then under this outdoor ground, I'm going to go to asphalt and I'm going to select this simple asphalt material and place it. So this material, as you can see, is too dark. I'm going to click on I to edit it. I'm going to just edit the material editor. I'm going to go to this base color. I'm going to reduce it from dark towards somewhere gray. Then I'm also going to reduce the specular nature. I'm going to reduce the specular. I'm going to reduce the scale, or rather increase the scale by reducing this value, so it will be bigger and more pronounced. So I think this asphalt material is much better. I'm also going to go back and edit the material and apply some nice masonry stone tiles. To do that, I'm going to go to assets. So I'm just going to click on this wall tiles. So under this wall tiles, I'm just going to look for some nice masonry wall stones. So I'm just going to look for some nice red bricks. So I'm just going to click on these deep red brick walls and I'm just going to click on this and place it. Okay, so now I think it has placed. So now it has placed, I'm going to click on I to edit it. Then I could just edit the stretch and reduce the scale so it won't be too big. But I'm not feeling this material too much. It's looking somewhat too basic. So I'm just going to try and use this other masonry stone tiles instead. I'm going to use this brown jumping brick and I'm just going to place it. I think I placed it on the wrong material. I'm going to click Ctrl Z and I'm going to place it here. So I'm going to click on I on my keyboard. I'm going to click on this. I'm just going to increase the value to reduce the scale so it won't be too short in this. So I'm just going to save this, Ctrl S. Okay, just to add, you could also click on I and edit this flowing water material. Then we could change this material template to flowing water so it will look a bit more realistic. We can now select the kind of flowing water. Let me just use this whitish one. Then we could see, we could go back to this color and we could change this color towards white so it will not be looking weird as it seems. So we could increase the foam of the flowing water, we could increase the flow velocity, then this will look much better. Although we're still going to place a component here to actually imitate the flowing water much better. Alright, so now the next phase we're going to be talking about is the composition phase, and we're going to build the composition of this environment to achieve a very good looking render. Alright, now to start with this composition, we're going to go to start with placing some background buildings. To do that, D5 has some background buildings, but the background buildings are too big. So I'm going to be using my own for my own D5 library. So I'm going to go to assets, I'm going to go to local. So I'm going to go under this folder I created to place the background buildings, and I'm just going to be placing some of them. I'm going to be placing this one here. I'm going to rotate it and adjust the position appropriately. Then I'm going to adjust this, place this somewhere here. It's always good to know that your background building shouldn't be dragging too much attention with the main building, because your main building is the key focus. I'm going to be selecting this other one. Sometimes these background buildings, if they are too heavy, it can be problematic, so just keep note of that. So I'm also going to place this one somewhere here. So I'm going to go back to our view. It's always good while working on the composition of a building, you need to be going back to the view, to the scene, but again and again, just to make sure everything is right and you don't just create things out of proportion. So I'm just going to from here click on this. I'm going to adjust this building somewhere here. I'm going to push it back because I don't want it to be taking too much attention. Place it somewhere here. The same for this. I'm going to place this. I'm going to push this here, and I'm going to move this. Then I'm going to go back to this scene and look at how it's looking. So I think it's looking very good. The background buildings are not dragging too much attention. So before moving forward, I want to just edit some things in these background buildings. First of all, I'm going to make the glass. The glass is looking too tinted. I'm just going to change the color and make it more transparent, because I'm still going to be plating light fixtures there. So I'm going to be clicking this as well, and I'm going to be making the background glass. more transparent. So now we've placed the background buildings. We are going to start placing some base greeneries. Okay, to start with some base greeneries, I'm going to start with some nice palm trees. I'm going to click on T to access the orthographic view, so it will be easy for me to place them. So I'm going to go to assets. I'm going to go to online. I'm going to go to models. Under models, I'm going to go to nature. Under nature, I'm going to look for palms. Okay, so now I preferably use this palm. And another thing to note while picking models in D5 Render, you are going to see an icon attached to it here. Well, what this icon means is that once I place this palm tree in this scene and I maybe click an animation video and I turn on the wind settings, this plant is going to animate. But if I select a plant like this that don't have this icon, it's not going to animate. So it's always good to keep that in mind while selecting this component. So I'm going to select this plant. Okay, so now I've selected it. As you can see, this palm tree is too big, so I'm going to click on escape. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go under this brush icon. I'm going to now edit these parameters and make sure it's small. Then I'm just going to click on this minus and I'm going to click on this. I'm going to click on this brush, then I'm going to uncheck this brush, then I'm going to click on this again. So what this does is that even though I'm not using brush tool, placement of this model is going to be going in accordance with the settings I put in that brush. For instance, I've placed this one now, so I still feel that the size of these palms are too big, so I'm going to reduce this random size, make sure and just try and place it again. Okay, so now as you can see, the settings have affected, but I'm going to go back. I'm going to increase the size a bit. I don't want it to be this small, somewhere here, and I'm going to try and place it again. Okay, so I think this size is good, so I'm going to place a palm here. I'm going to place one here. I'm going to place another one here, place another one here. I'm also going to be placing one here, one here, one here, and one here. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to this, going to close this. I'm going to go back to this view. So as you can see, we can now see how the palms are coming out. Okay, some of these palms are good, but some are too big. So once I click on any one that is too big, I'm just going to go here and reduce the value. So I'm going to reduce this to about 3 meters. The same thing for this. I'm going to click on this. I'm going to I think this is good where it is, so I'm just going to move it to somewhere towards here. Okay, so now we've placed some of this good palm. Let me just select this one behind this and just make it come out here a bit. I'm going to now go and place some nice deciduous plants. So I'm going to go to T again, this top view. So now once I go to T, I'm going to go to assets. I'm going to go to this broad leaf plant and I'm going to be looking for some nice deciduous plants. So firstly, I want an iconic one that will be just good for it will just be at a position in the building. So I'm just going to try and place this one first. All right, so I'm just going to be placing this here. And I'm also going to be looking, there's a particular deciduous plant I use. So I'm going to pick this plant now, this deciduous plant. Where I'm going to place this deciduous plant, I'm going to place it in a manner that is going to be like an umbrella for this our camera shot. So I'm just going to place it somewhere here. Then I'm going to click escape and close this. Then I'm going to go back to this our camera shot. So you can see what I mean by this being an umbrella, but this is obstructing our view. So I'm just going to adjust it. So I'm going to click on P to exit this 2-point perspective setting. I'm not going to move out a bit. I'm going to select this plant here, this deciduous plant, and I'm just going to move it towards here. I may maybe even tilt it a bit, go over to this axis and just tilt it a bit so it will create a nice effect. And I'm just going to drag it down and I'm going to place it somewhere around here. Then I'm going to go and see it. So this is still not good. Our camera shot is still here. I'm just going to place this here and drag this here. And I'm going to go back to this view. Okay, so we are getting there, but it's still not where we want it to be. So I'm going to move this a bit, let's say somewhere here, and I'm going to look at this view. Okay, it's still too much, so I'm just going to move this backwards again, move this a bit closer, more backwards, and I'm going to look back at this view. Okay, so I think this is not looking bad. All right, so now we are done placing this background vegetation, or not really background, these starter vegetations or basic vegetations. I'm going to click on P again to exit this 2-point perspective setting. Okay, click on P just to make sure I'm not restricted by the settings. So as you can see, these two greeneries are interfering with each other. So I'm just going to go and move this one to this point here, so it will serve a different purpose. Okay, so now we are done with this. I'm going to start placing some other shrubs throughout the site. So I'm going to go to T again. I'm going to go to Asset, Flowering Shrubs. Okay, so now we're in Flowering Shrubs. Now we are going to be using some of this nice greenery now. So I'm going to start from this one, which is one of my favorites. I'm going to check this setting and make sure the size is at the maximum. Then I'm going to try and start placing it. So I'm just going to try this and make sure this size is at the maximum. Then okay, so I'm just going to be placing this at points on the site. I'm going to place this here, place this here, place this here, also place this here, place this here, place one here. Okay, then I could also place one here. I could also place another one here, place one here, place another one here just below this roofing. Okay, so now I'm going to be also placing some of them here. I'm going to be placing one here, placing one here, and placing one here. Okay, so now we are done with this. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to put a nice flower bed in this garden, since it's the central point. At the same time, this flower bed I'm going to be creating is that it's not going to obstruct the view, but I'm going to go to group vegetation. So I'm just going to go and click on this flower bed here. Sometimes these flower beds can be really heavy, so you should keep that in mind. Let me select this flower bed combo here and just chill for it to load. Alright, so now the flower bed is loaded in. You can see how it's lagging the system. I'm going to place it here, then I'm just going to maybe rotate it in this position here. I'm just going to move it and try and just set it at this bed here. Okay, let me just set it somewhere here. Okay, somewhere here. Let me set it somewhere here. Then I'm also going to do the same. I'm going to copy it here and I'm just going to rotate it and place it somewhere here. So this will give us one nice flower bed. Okay, so now we've placed this flower bed. Let me just adjust it a bit. Now we've placed this flower bed. I want to place a supporting greenery here, just an iconic one. I could just go under these flowering trees here and I could look for a nice flowering tree I'm going to use. So let me just try and select. Okay, let me try and select this one here. Okay, so once I select this, I'm just going to place it. So now I'm just going to go over here. I'm going to reduce this size setting so it won't be too big. I'm going to make it as small as possible. Then I'm going to click on it again and I'm just going to, okay, let me just place it first. Then once I place it, I'm going to click on it. I'm going to reduce the size value to about 2.4 meters. Which I still consider big, but I'm just going to hold shift and I'm going to copy it here. Okay, so now we are going to go back to our perspective view, because this is the issue. There is always it's always not good to work from an orthographic view alone while working on 3D views, because you might just put some things off. So for instance, you can see that this is off and is obstructing this view. So what we are going to do is we are going to reduce this size to about 1.2. That is half the size, so it won't be too big. We are going to click on this and we are going to shift it a bit. Okay, we are going to click on this shrub here and we're just going to try and move it closer somewhere here, which I think is good. So far we are building this vegetation very well and it's looking very good. So now I want to now start working on the lighting of this render. So now I'm going to click on P again. So the first thing to do while working on lighting is to create a layer for the light. To do that, you are just going to go over to this icon here. You are going to click on this plus layer. So once you click on this plus, you are going to create a new layer. So now I'm just going to right click and I'm going to click on rename this 01 lighting. Okay, so now you click on this 01 lighting. You can now place things under this layer. So let's just start by placing lighting in these background buildings. So now we are just going to go to these background buildings. Now we have gone to this background building, we are just going to go over to this add light icon here. Once we click on add light, for me to add in lights inside buildings, for it to be popping out through the windows, I like using rectangular lights for that. So I'm going to click on this and I'm going to place this. So once I've placed this, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to this tab here and I'm going to change it to lighting, so it will be in that lighting layer. I'm now going to go over here. I'm going to make sure this is checked. Then once I check this, I'll make sure there is no cross line across it. I'm going to increase the size to about 4 meters. So now I've increased the size, I can now increase the intensity of the light to about 75. Then I could now increase the attenuation radius. Then I'm now going to go and increase the temperature towards the very warm side. So now I've done this, I could now move this light and copy it around. So I could click on this light, select it, hold shift, click on it and copy it around. So you can see that the light is pronounced enough to be popping out of the windows, and that is the effect you want to get in evening renders. Note that we will not use these lights in daylight. So the reason why we're creating layers for them is so when we need to hide them, we could easily off the layer and hide everything. So I could just from here hold shift and copy it. So once I copy it, I'm just going to drag it into this our main model. So now once we are in our main model, we are just going to start copying these lights around. So we are going to place one here in this room here. We are going to make sure it's towards the ceiling. Okay, then I'm still going to, I think, push it up more. Okay, so I think this is good. So you can see how pronounced the light is. So I'm also going to hold shift on my keyboard, and I'm just going to be copying it to other spaces. For instance, this space here, I'm going to copy it here. I'm also going to be copying it to this space here. Okay, so now I'm going to also copy it over here too, because this building is pretty simple. I'm going to copy it here. I'm also going to copy it here to this upper space here. I'm going to copy it here. I'm going to hold shift and copy it here. So I'm going to be going to this other view here, and I'm just going to copy it to this point. So I'm going to select this one here. I'm going to hold shift. I'm copying it to this space. I'm going to hold shift here, copy it here. I'm going to hold shift here, copy it here. Remember that all these lights are under lighting layer. So once I click on hide, everything is going to hide. And I just noticed some issue with this model. The first issue is the reflection on this ceiling. And I noticed that this window is actually closed. I forgot to use the void extrusion to cut an opening through here. So I'm going to go back to Revit, and I'm going to update all that. But let's just finish placing this light first. Okay. So I'm just going to click on this light over here, this one just, and I'm just going to copy it directly up. Okay, so now for this light, in the final aspect I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the interior light to this background buildings. So I'm just going to hold shift, copy this one, copy. So I'm still going to place this here. I'm just going to go over and move it somewhere here. So I'm going to rotate it and make sure that it's aligned to a good position, and I'm just going to place it inside one of these spaces. So let me just go over here, go to this space and place it here. So as you can see how well lit this space is. So I'm just going to be in that same fashion. I'm going to be copying this here and here. So I'm going to position this light here. I'm also going to position another one here. I'm going to go over to this floor, position one here, position one here, position one here, go over to this floor, position one at this rear region, and copy one here, also copy one here. So now we are done and we have placed all these lights. We could just select this, and we are going to hold Control and select all these lights here. Once I select all the lights, I'm going to select this model. I'm going to go over to this object tabs. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to click on group. So this will be grouped into one. So once I hide it, I could just hide it anytime I want, although the components are still in different layers. So I'm going to also select this. I'm going to select this, select this building, and I'm just going to right click, and I'm going to group it. Okay, so now we're going to go back to this view, and we're going to see what we've done. So now we've created light, and we've placed light in this layer. If I click on this off now, you could see that all the lights will disappear in this view. So let me just change the sun setting so you are going to see it properly. So if I just go and rotate this sun setting, let me rotate it towards here. You could see that these spaces don't more have light again, that the lights are hidden. Okay, so if I go back and just uncheck this on again, it's going to turn on again. So depending on the kind of view I want, I could on this light and I could turn it off or turn it on depending on what I want to do. So now let's continue working on the lighting of the site. We're going to go back and click P to access this 2-point perspective. Now I want to place some background site lights. These background site lights can be done with street lights or bollard lights, but preferably I'm going to be using bollard lights. So I'm going to go to T again. I'm going to go to Asset. Under Asset, I'm going to go to Local. So under this Local, I'm going to try and load in my bollard light from my local live. All right, so now I'm just going to bring it in now. Okay, so now I'm just going to place it here first. So I'm going to go back to this 2-point perspective set, like not the 2-point. I'm going to go back to the perspective view, and I'm going to try and see how this thing is positioned. So firstly, I'm just going to raise it up, and I'm going to make sure it's set in place. So now I've raised it up, I'm going to click on this. I'm going to go under this group now. I'm going to click on this drop down icon because this already comes with lights and they are grouped together. I'm going to click on this point light. So what I'm going to do is now I've clicked on the point light, I'm going to change it from default layer to lighting layer. I'm also going to increase the attenuation radius of this point light so it will have a broader reach. Then I'm going to click out to close the group. So now I'm going to click on T to access this top orthographic view. I'm now going to click on this and I'm going to start copying it at intervals. I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to move this somewhere here. I'm going to hold shift, copy this to this point here. I'm also going to hold shift, copy this here. Hold shift, copy this somewhere here. Hold shift, copy this here. I'm also going to hold shift again and copy it to this point here, close to the building. Do the same for around here. I'm also going to hold shift, copy it somewhere here too, just to eliminate this point. Copy it somewhere here as well. Then I'm going to copy it somewhere here too, and I'm also going to move it and copy it here. Okay, I think here is good. Then one final one here. So I'm going to go back to this 2-point perspective view. You could see how the bollard light, you could see how they are illuminating the site. So if I, for instance, if I turn this from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. in the evening, you could see that everywhere is dark, but the light in the environment is still very bright. So let's go back to this setting. And also, if I click on go to these layers here and I click on this lighting layer to turn off, you are going to see all the lighting layer will disappear. This is very helpful if you want to do a night and a daytime view in the same project. So depending on the view you want, you could turn off your light, you could turn it on, whatever you want to do. So let's just update this scene because this scene is coming without light. Okay, let me just turn this light on because I'm still working on the lighting, and I'm just going to update this. Okay, so now we are still working on the lighting. I'm going to click on P, okay, to exit the 2-point perspective setting. So now I want to place some nice chandelier light here. So this chandelier light, of course, I'm going to be using my own component. So I'm going to be going to indoor light. So I'm going to be using a favorite chandelier I usually use for classical project like this. So I'm going to just place it here. Okay, then I'm just going to try and position it at this central point so it will be visible. So I'm going to drag it down, and I'm just going to position it very well. Okay, so now this is done. I'm going to go back to this view now. So the aim of all this going back to this view is just to make sure that anything I create is very visible here. So I'm going to think of the option of dragging it back a bit and how it's going to look. Okay, I think if I drag it to somewhere here, it's going to look good. So now I could just drag it. I could also increase the size of this to 1.5 meter, which is actually big, but I think it's worth the while. So I'm just going to try and set it very well. And it's always important to remember to save your project always. So I'm going to click on Ctrl S to save the project. Okay, so now we've placed this. I also want to place some wall lights. So to do that, I'm going to go to Assets. I'm going to go to my own local library. I'm now going to select a classical wall light I usually use. So now once I place it, I could just click on this and place it somewhere here. Okay, so now I'm just going to rotate this classical light to 90 degrees, and I'm going to place it just somewhere here along this. Okay, so now for this light here, I want to add some support lights to both this chandelier and this classical light. So I'm just going to be going to this add light here. I'm going to be going to point light. So under this point light, I'm going to place it here first, close to it. Then I'm going to change it. The first thing, I'm going to change it from default layer to lighting layer. Then under this lighting layer, I'm going to increase the temperature. That is the normal thing I'm going to do. Then the intensity can be low because I don't want the intensity to be too much. Then I'm just going to place it somewhere here. Okay, so now I'm going to hold shift to copy it, and I'm going to place one. Click on this central box, and I'm going to place one along close to this chandelier here. So it will just look. Let me zoom in closer and try to place it at the center point and just raise it to the top. All right, so now I've done this, I could just select this. I could go and make sure the light is placed at the center. I could select this light too. I could right click and I could just group it. So now I've grouped it, I could now copy it along this project. Let's say I shift one here and I just copy another one to this point. I hold shift and copy this to this point here. I could also click on this. I could hold shift, click on this, hold shift, copy it here. Then I could just rotate it and place it somewhere. Okay, I think this wall is already filled up pretty much. So let me just try and see if I'll place it another place. Let me place it, rotate it at 90 degrees. So let me just go over here, change the angle to 90 degrees. Okay, so now I'm just going to move this and position this somewhere here. Let me just position it at this staircase wall. All right, so now we've done this. I'm just going to click on this. I'm going to hold shift to copy this, and I'm going to place this here. So now we are going to go back to this view and we're going to see what we are doing. Okay, so the best way to appreciate this view is when you turn this to an evening view, but we're still going to do that, but we're just taking this step by step. So I'm going to go back to P to exit the 2-point perspective setting. So now we are done with the wall light, we are done with the chandelier light. So what are we going to do next? We are going to place some more greeneries where they are meant to be placed, especially pertaining to this fountain. So I'm going to be going to assets, I'm going to go into online. So under this online, I'm going to be going to ornament. Okay, I'm going to be going to flowering herbs. So under these flowering herbs, I'm going to just place some of these nice flowering plants. I'm going to be placing them at locations here. I'm going to place this here at all this spacing I left in between. I'm going to place this. I'm going to go over here, increase the size, and I'm going to place this somewhere. Okay, let me place this one here. I'm going to place this here. Then I could also place this here as well. Could also place this plant here, or rather even this one here. Just place this here. Okay, so just for it not to obstruct some of this. So I'm going to go back to this on flowering shrubs. So under these flowering shrubs, I'm going to look for this flower here. I'm going to try and reduce the size so it won't be too big. Then I'm just going to try and place it on this fountain. So I'm going to be placing one here. Okay, this is too tall. I'm going to reduce the size. I'm going to click on it, and I'm just going to be placing one here. I'm going to be placing another flowering shrub somewhere here, and I'm going to be looking for other ones just to make this place colorful and beautiful. Just place one here. Okay, so basically let me just place this here. I could just click on this. I could click on shift to copy. I could place this here. I could reduce the size to about 450. Then I could just place this. I could copy the rest around. Copy maybe this. Okay, let me just copy this here. Okay, so now we are done with placing all this greenery here. We could just go and add some particle effect, some nice fountain effect. To do that, we could go under this add particles here. So under this add particles, you are going to see a lot of particles to add. We are now going to go under fluid. So under this fluid, we are going to see some fountain. So we are going to try and see if we could download some fountain effect. So let's download this one and see how it's going to look. All right, so now we're going to click on this fountain and we're just going to place it here. So you could see that this is looking beautiful. We could also add some drop down fountain effects and see how it's going to look. But although I doubt if we'll be able to edit it to this custom, so I think this is going to be enough. All right, so as you can see, let's go back to our view now. You could see the work we've done. We've done some amazing work, but unfortunately we may need to just delete this green area because it's kind of obstructing this fountain. So let me just delete this flowering plant. So as you can see, there's a lot of things going on in this view now, so we still need to work on this. So now I want to start creating some nice curtains for these interiors of this building, so it will not just, you will not just be seeing through glass, you have a glass and a curtain, which makes the render more realistic. So I'm going to click on P now. So now I'm just going to go and place some curtains. So D5 usually have its own curtains, but D5 curtains are not as translucent as I want them to be. So I'm going to be using my own curtain. I'm going to go into asset. I'm going to go to local. All right, so I'm just going to select the curtain and I'm just going to place it here. Okay, so now what we're going to be doing is all the window openings, we're going to be placing the curtains there. Okay, so I'm just going to rotate this. So once I rotate it, I'm going to click on I on my keyboard. I'm going to select this and I'm going to just copy this. So now I want to copy this translucent material of the curtain to other parts of the curtain. So I'm just going to make sure everything is unified. So once that is done, I'm going to start placing this curtain around every space of this project. So first of all, let me go back to this curtain. I'm going to go to I. I'm just going to select this curtain and I'm going to try and edit the opacity to just make it more. So once I edit it, I'm going to make sure I recopy it so everything will synergize. So now I'm just going to click on this curtain for instance, then I'm going to start copying it around. So I'm going to place one here. I'm also going to hold shift and place another one here. So now I'm going to hold shift again and place another one here. So now basically all the curtains in this project, like the spaces in this project, are kind of in a modular manner. So I'm going to hold shift, select all the curtains. So I could just easily decide to copy all the curtains on this floor to the next floor, and it will perfectly align. So once I've copied it, you could see everything is good. So now I'll go back to this view now, and I'm going to see what works. So now we still want to add some more background greening. This background greening, I mean, will not affect the shadow placement of this site, and we're going to place some background greenery outside the site. So of course I'm going to click on P. This one I don't need to go to an orthographic view, I just need to start looking at this. So at this point now, we'll now start looking at the shadow study of this project now, because we want to use trees to cast some very beautiful shadows here. So now I'm going to go to assets first. I'm going to go to online. Under online, I'm going to go to models. I'm now going to go to broadleaf plants. So under this broadleaf, I'm going to just be selecting some broadleaf plants that will serve as a buffer for light, so it is going to control the light hitting the building. So at this point, I'll now start simultaneously working on the settings of this project, because they work hand in hand. So let's just place ones to just support the beautification. Let's increase the size and just place some here. So I'm going to place one here close to this place. I'm going to place another one here. Okay, so which is all good. So now I'm going to start working on the render settings. So let's start from the daylight render. Let's go back to this view now, and we want to start working on the daylight render. Okay, so now as you can see, these two greens we put, they are looking good, but we'll still work some more. We'll still work, there's still even work on the composition. Okay, so now we are just going to click on plus to duplicate these scenes. So once we've duplicated this scene, we can now go to this second one, and now okay, let's use this first one. Then we'll just turn off this lighting layer, and we're going to make sure we update it. So now this lighting layer is turned off. There is no more need for us to turn on this LED light, because it will be looking too much. So I'm going to click on I. I'm going to click on P2, so to normal this 2-point perspective setting, I want to restrict my movement. I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to check this emissive. So now we have a pure daylight view now we want to render. So we'll now start looking at the sun study and factors affecting this daylight view. So of course I'm going to click on P. But before I even add these three, it's always important, one nice touch while rendering buildings in D5 Render is I want to add a very nice vehicle just to adorn this scenery. So I'm going to go to assets, I'm going to go to local, because D5 has some nice cars, but I usually prefer the ones I got from 3ds Max models with very realistic cars. So I'm just going to go to where I kept the vehicles. Remember I said I'm going to be leaving the models for you to get these models so you could use it to practice. Okay, so now I'm just going to click, and I'm going to select this Land Cruiser Prado and see how it goes. Okay, so I'm just going to place this here. So now that I've placed this, I'm going to look for an appropriate position to place this car in such a way that it is not going to obstruct the view. At the same time, it's going to make this scenery more beautiful. So let's say I put it somewhere here. Let me just see how it looks. So I'm going to go back to this first view now, and I'm going to look at how this thing looks. Okay, this car being here is good, but I'll still need another one here. So I'm going to go back to assets again. I'm going to go and look for Mercedes-Benz S-Class. I'm going to change this, and I'm going to select this. Okay, so this is good now. So now I've placed this. This is obstructing this view, obviously. So I'm going to click on P to exit this 2-point perspective. So now I'm going to try and position it in a way that it makes sense. So let me position it somewhere here. Okay, then I'm going to close this and go back to this view. So as you can see, this is good, but I'm just going to tilt this somewhere here. So once I tilt this, I'm going to tilt this somewhere here. Okay, or I could just rotate it so it will be the rear of the vehicle that we are seeing. I'm going to go to P. Let me just try and tilt it somewhere here. Then I'm just going to move it somewhere here so it won't obstruct this fountain. So let's just look at this now. So if, as you can see, this car is looking good, but let's just place it according to here. So now I want to get a nice plate number, because this Benz doesn't have a plate number. So I'm going to bring in another of the vehicles I use. So let me just bring in this Lexus and see if I could copy a nice plate number and give it so it will look more realistic. Okay, so now I've placed this. This is also a very realistic model, but I don't want to use it for this project. So I'm going to click on I. I'm just going to select this, and I'm going to copy this and copy it here, which is looking good. I'm also going to click on I. I'm going to select this transparent, and I'm going to reduce the reflectivity. The same for this, reduce the reflectivity so it won't be too much. Okay, then I'm just going to delete this model now. Okay, so now this is good. I'm going to close this and I'm going to go back to this view. Another important thing to do is save my project. So remember I said that I'm going to be working in tandem with the sun study to know exactly where I'm going to place some of these background greeneries on the site. So now I want to start working on the site, the environmental effect of this scenery now. So I'm going to go back to this view. So in D5 you could use this geo and sky to create a nice effect, but me, I usually prefer using HDRIs. So now I've clicked on this HDRI, I'm going to try and use a default HDRI that comes with D5 render, so it will be easy for people to follow. So I'm going to click on, instead of this early morning, I'm going to be selecting this partly sunny. Okay, so now I've selected this partly sunny. I'm going to uncheck this and make sure this goes back up. So now I'm going to go to effect. Under this effect, I'm going to turn off this auto exposure. Then once I turn it off, I'm just going to reduce the value. Okay, so now I've reduced the value. I'm also going to reduce the bloom amount of this scenery. Then I'm going to increase the temperature a bit, so it's going to be warmed. Okay, then now I'm going to increase the tint a bit. And it's always good that while you are creating this setting, even though you have not completely created it, it's always good to always update this scenery. Okay, so now we have done all this, we want to start working with this sun study. So the effect I want to create is I want a tree to filter out shadows and cast on this building, so it will give this kind of twilight effect. So to do that, we're just going to click on P and we're going to be observing the sun study and looking at how the thing cast and how they go into this environmental tab, and we're going to be using this sun study to check how the building interact with shadows. Okay, so now I'm going to go under assets, I'm going to go to online, I'm going to go to broadleaf. So now under this broadleaf, I'm going to look for a good greenery that could filter out a lot of sun effect. So I'm going to be selecting, okay, let's try this one now. So now I've clicked on this one, I'm going to place it somewhere here. So now I've placed it, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to increase it to a ginormous size, let's say 35 meters. So this is really, okay, 35 is too much, let me reduce it to 25 meters. Okay, so this is really ginormous now. So now we're just going to place it somewhere here. Sometimes you could place this in the middle of the road. It's just to create this scene, this effect we are looking for. So now we've placed it there. We're now going to look at this from a very good point of view. So as you can see, this is already casting a shadow over this building. If I go back to effect and I'm looking at the way the sun is moving, I could also check this sun effect on. I could reduce the sun intensity and still be looking at this thing. So as you can see, this tree is not cutting what we want. It's casting too much shadows and we want it to be like filtered. If you go back to this view now and we look at what this tree is doing, you could see that it's covering a lot of part of the building. It's kind of helping, but it's not exactly what we want. So I'm going to click on P again and I'm going to delete it and I'm going to try using another kind of plant. So I'm going to delete this. This plant is too dense. So I'm going to go to assets. I'm going to look for another kind of plant. Okay, so let's say I try this plant now. And now this plant is a small plant, but I feel it can still serve. So now once I place this, I'm going to click on this plant. Now I'm going to increase it to larger and normal size of 20 meter. Okay, so now this is at 20 meter. I could place maybe one here. I could also click on this and place another one here. So it's also going to cast shadows, like an array of shadows on the site. So once I click on this here, I could click this and I could just move it somewhere here. Okay, then I could also click on this tree plant here. I don't want, this one is too dense. I'm going to reduce the size to about 3.6 meter. Hey, I made it too big. I made it 36 meter, 3.6. Sorry. So now I'm going to select this and I'm going to try and move this here. So now I'm going to go back to this view and I'm going to look at what we are doing. So now you can see that this is not yet giving us what we want. Let's look at this sun study. So let's go back here and let's try and go back to this environment. We can now go adjust this light first. We can increase the background light. I think the background and the skylights are good the way they are. So I could just start rotating this and see what is going to give us. So let me just rotate this and rotate. Try and put the sun at a very nice position where it's going to give us this twilight effect. This, okay, I think this angle is good. So now we've changed it to this angle. Let me just reduce it a bit. So now I'm just going to click on this to update this scene. Okay, this is too much sunlight, so I'm going to take it towards here. Okay, I think this is now fine. So now I'm just going to click on this to update I could now tweak some factors. Then I could go back to this P and I could still try and align this greenery. So now I'm going to click on this greenery. I'm going to push this back so the shadow effect will be more on the side. I'm going to click on this and try and place it in a position where the sun effect will just cast directly on the building. So now I've done this, I'm going to go back to this view and I'm going to see what I've done. Okay, so now the shadow effects are casting on the building, but it's still not enough. I'm not still getting that feeling I want. So I think I'm going to change the plant. So I'm going to change this from this plant here. I'm going to click on this to delete this because this is not giving me enough shadows as I want. Then I'm just going to go to assets and I'm going to load in another deciduous plant. So I'm going to be loading in this plant here. So this one is a thick dense plant, but I feel it should cut out the trick. So now I'm going to place this here. So immediately I've placed this here, you could see that the shadow effect is already there. So now I'm going to change this to 18 meters. Okay, so now I can now start adjusting the position and seeing how the thing interacts with the light on the building. So as you can see, the thing is obstructing already. So I'm just going to try and push this and I'm just going to see how the thing goes. So you could see the effect of the shadow effect on the building. So now there are some things I want to add. I'm just going to adjust the position of this car just a bit, just push it somewhere here. I'm going to still add some more background buildings here, and I want to add some more vegetations just to catch the attention of people, some stones and some shrubs, because in nature there is no perfection. So let's just work on that. So I'm going to go to assets. I'm going to go to ornamental grass. So under this ornamental grass, I'm just going to go over here. I'm going to start picking some of these shrubs and the bigger ones. I'm going to place, maybe let me place this here. I'm going to go over here, place this here. I'm going to click on P to exit the 2-point perspective setting. Okay, then I don't like this green area, so I'm just going to place one here. I could also go under this nature. I could go to rocks. So under these rocks, I'm just going to select the default rock here. I'm going to place this. This is too big. I could click on this. I could just reduce the size to about 900. So once I've reduced the size, I could place this here, somewhere here. I could rotate this, click on this, rotate it. Then I could just place it somewhere here. So now I could just go to hedge, or rather ornamental shrub, flowering shrub, I think here. Then I'm just going to select one of these mini shrubs here. I could select this and put this here. I could go back to ornamental grass and I could just put this shrub here. I could reduce the size and just place it at intervals here. Maybe I'll place one here. Could also place this one here, place this here. Go to rocks, look for a different kind of rock, and maybe place this one here, somewhere here. Alright, so now we're done with this. We're going to go back to this view now, and we're going to be seeing what we've done now. So now we still need to place some more greeneries around this background. So I'm going to click on P and I'm going to place some more background vegetation. So now I'm going to click on this orthographic view now, and I'm just going to be placing some more vegetations around. From this orthographic view, I could even see some of this shadow and still tweak this to cast shadows on the building. I could go to assets again. I could go to not flowering shrub, broadleaf plants. Then under this broadleaf plant, I could now start placing some of these broadleaf plants around. I could go to here, tweak the size, increase the size, and I could just place some of these broadleaf plants around. Let me place one here, 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 here. Okay, so I could just select another different kind. I could place this one here just at the background. So I'm placing one here. I'm also placing one somewhere here. I could go and place these tall trees, that go and look for these deciduous tall trees. I could place this one here just to create a nice background base around this building. So I could just place this one somewhere here. Okay, and place maybe one somewhere here. So now if we go back to this view, we're going to see what we've done. So as you can see, this plant we created is too tall, so we could just reduce the size to about let me use 24 meters, and I could just move it somewhere here. So it's just going to serve as this green background here. So now we could just add some more details. Okay, let's adjust this vegetation here, this plant here. We could do this. Then we could also go and add some little details. Let's just add some butterflies. So I'm just going to go to this search asset and I'm going to type butterflies. Let me just type butter. So I'm going to see this butterfly, and I'm just going to go over here and place it somewhere here. So now I'm going to make sure I go here and click on X to close this butterfly search, so it will not be restricted to only butterfly. So I'm going to click on P. I'm going to add bird, click on birds, and I'm going to bring in one bird first. So what I do in the case of bird is I'm going to click on this bird. I'm going to now reposition it. I'm going to hold shift to duplicate it. Hold shift, just scatter them randomly. So after I'm done scattering them randomly, I'm going to change the height. Then once I'm done changing the height, I'm going to close this. I'm just going to go to this object tab here, click on this. I'm going to hold shift, select this as well. Then I'm just going to right click and I'm going to click group. So now I've grouped them. I could easily move them around. I could just adjust them, place this somewhere here, then shift this here, and I'm just going to place this around here. Another thing I forgot to do is I forgot to apply materials on this dot. We could quickly do that. Click on I, select this dot here, change the material to white, reduce the metallic nature, just reduce it, and it's already white. So now we're just going to click on this bed. We're going to go back to this view, and I'm just going to adjust these beds to around, let's say somewhere here. Okay, I think this is good. Alright, so now we are going to add some entourage to this view before we click render. Okay, so we're going to go to assets, we're going to go to people, we are finally going to add some D5 human beings. So I could add this guy over here. I think he's a good D5 model. So let me just place it here. Just place him. I just don't like entourage obstructing view, so I'm just going to place him where light. Okay, let me just place him somewhere here, so it won't be too close. Okay, let me place it somewhere here. Okay, under the light somewhere here. All right, so we could also place this lady here. We could also place this lady. Okay, I think I'll need to download. We could place this lady. Let's place her at the balcony. Go to P, click on P, and place the lady at the balcony. Okay, now we could just go back, and we could go back to this view now and see what we are doing. So now we could also add some spotlights. I know this is a daylight view, but it's still always good to add some touches of light here and there. So it's a daylight view, but this is a building where people are living, so people will probably on their lights and stuff during the day or stuff, despite that it's daylight. So now I'm going to save this. I'm going to click on P, and I'm just going to click on this. I'm going to go to assets, and I'm just going to go to local library. So under this local library, I'm just going to go to all models, and I'm going to look for where I kept my spotlights. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm just going to place this spotlight here. So now I'm just going to close this material library or model library, and I'm just going to adjust this spotlight here. So now I've adjusted it. I'm going to go clip it here, and I'm just going to hold shift to copy this, copy it here. I'm going to select it. Okay, before I even copy it, what I want to do is I'm going to click on delete here. So now I'm going to turn on this lighting layer first. So once I turn on this lighting layer, I'm just going to click on this, and I'm going to click on this spotlight, and I'm going to place a spotlight here because I want to group them. So once I place this spotlight, I'm going to change the layer to lighting layer. I'm going to reduce the intensity. I'm going to increase the temperature and increase the attenuation radius. So now I've done all that, I'm going to select this, and I'm going to hold Ctrl and select this light icon. I'm just going to right click, and I'm going to group them together. So now once I've grouped them, I'm going to put this, and I'm going to hold shift and reposition this here. I'm also going to copy this somewhere here, and okay, I could even copy this into 3. Copy this here. The same thing for this, just copy it. So once I click back at this view, all the lights will still hide, but all this light source will still be there. Okay, so just for one final touch, I think I'm just going to add some background just to add to more realism. I'm going to add some overhead tanks since this is a residence. I'm going to click on P. I'm going to exit the 2-point perspective setting. I'm going to go to assets, and I'm just going to look for some overhead tanks in my own local asset library. Alright, so now I've spotted the overhead tank. I'm just going to click on it, and I'm going to place maybe 1 or 2 here, just outside here, and I'm going to copy it and place another one here. So now I'm going to go back, close this, and I'm going to go back to this view. So I'll always be careful so I won't make this view over clustered. So I feel this is too much. I'm just going to delete it, that this is making this look already over clustered. So I could just add some more realistic effect here. I could add some foliage. I could go to assets. I could go to online. Okay, so I'm just going to go under the case, Under these decals, I'm just going to start and place some leaves. So to place these leaves, I'm just going to place them at the rims of this interlock. I'm just going to rotate it at 90 degrees. I'm now going to place it at these rims here. I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to click on P. This 2-point perspective setting is usually annoying. So I'm just going to shift this. I'm going to hold shift. Okay, Ctrl Z. I'm going to click this and I'm just going to close this first. I'm going to click on shift. Okay, I could go back to this view again and see what we've done. So I could go to assets again. I could still go and add some realistic stuff like this footprint. I could add maybe one here, could add another one here. It's just me just having fun and just playing with some stuff. So now I think one thing that this view is lacking is I need a very good flowering plant here, something that will just add some brightness to this green, because this place is looking too green. So I'm going to go to assets. I'm going to go to nature. Under nature, I'm going to go to ornamental grass. Okay, on flowering shrub, let me go to flowering shrub. I'm now going to add this plant here. So I'm just going to add this somewhere here. So I think that was the whole thing holding this view back. So I think, okay, I think we're done with this daylight scene. So I'm just going to hit Ctrl S and I'm going to render this. So to render, you just simply go over to this image icon here. You are now going to tweak some options, some settings here. We're going to change this to 3. I used to use 3.5K renders, so it will be high quality at the same time. It won't be too heavy like 8K renders and stuff. So but before we render, we're just going to save this project. So I'm going to click Ctrl S and I'm going to save this. So now I'm just going to click on render. Once I click on render, I'm now going to locate where I want to keep the renders. So now I'm just going to create a new folder and I'm going to name it 02 renders. Okay, so once I've created this folder, I'm just going to clear this. I'm going to name this as classical. Okay, before I even start this render, I noticed something. I'm going to click on cancel. So now I want to just tweak some of these settings because I didn't actually work on the settings very well. As usual, I'm going to turn on this sun settings, and once I turn it on, I'm going to reduce the sun intensity. Okay, so before the sun intensity, I'm just going to reduce this background light. And I'm going to, okay, I could increase this background light. I'm not going to reduce this skylight. So once I've reduced this skylight, it won't be too bright like that. So I'm just going to make sure it's controlled to somewhere just a nice killer spot. So I'm going to go under this effect. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to increase the contrast a bit, just tweak the contrast just to 0.05. The highlight is okay. I could reduce the highlight just a bit because it's kind of looking too shouty. So now I'm just going to go over here and I'm going to, the tint is okay. I'm going to increase this bloom amount because I need there to be more bloom. Okay, then I'm going to go over to this vignette setting. I'm going to increase the vignette setting. Under this saturation, I'm going to increase the saturation just a bit. Then I'm going to make sure I updated this. So before even updating, I'm just going to reduce it so it won't be this warm. I'm going to reduce the warmth and I'm going to change it towards the cooler side. I'm going to update this thing. So another thing I noticed is that I noticed that this dodge is too white and I can't see any details on it. So I'm going to try and work on it. Okay, so to do that, I'm just going to go and exit this render interface. Click on P to exit this 2-point perspective. So I think what is wrong with this is that it's reflective and it's too white. So I'm going to click on I. I'm going to select this. I'm going to drop the specular to 0. I'm going to go to this round corner triplanar, check this. I'm going to go check this round corner settings. I'm going to click on this, increase the metallicness, change this color towards gray a bit so it won't be too white. Then once it's at this color, I think it's good to go. Then I'll go back to this view here. So now I think the color is all right and I think everything can go now. So now I'm just going to click on render. I'm going to now apply this render settings. So now I'm just going to change this to about 3K5. Okay, then I'm going to make sure that all the settings are applied. I could see all of them. I think I could increase this bloom a bit more to about 0.23. Okay, let me reduce it just a bit. Okay, then I'll go back to this environment. I could reduce this skylight too to about this. So I think everything is pretty much set. I'll go back to this effect, look at everything. Then I'm just going to update this scene. Then I'm just going to click on render now. So under this render, I'm going to locate where I want to place the renders. Classical duplex. Daylight. Then I'm going to click on save and render it. So depending on how heavy the project is, it might take time. I think this render will take a bit of time. All right, so now the render is complete. I'm just going to click close. So now I'm just going to try and open the renders now. So let me just drag the folder here. So if you open it, highlight. So if you, as you can see how the renders came out. The thing came out very nice. This is a beautiful daylight render. Highlighting, you could see all the light fixtures and it's looking good. Okay, so now we are going to start rendering the evening or ambient render, however you want to see it. So let's close this. Okay, so now we are going to go to this, our second thing. We are going to uncheck this render. So now what we want to basically do is an ambient setting. So an ambient setting is easy in the sense that you don't need to do all this sun tweaking to cast shadow too much. So it's just basic ambience. So we're going to go under this environment. We're going to go to HDRI. Okay, before we move on, let's just save this project. I just remembered. Okay, so now we've saved it. Now we are going to go to environment. So we're going to be using this early morning for our ambient render. So of course, we are going to go to effect. We are going to turn off this auto exposure. So you can see how bright this is. We are going to drop it down. Now we are going to tone down everything. So now we are going to go to environmental effect. We are going to click on this two-way icon here. So everything will come out. We are going to reduce the background to about 0.15 or so. Okay, 0.15. Then we're going to reduce the skylight. So this skylight, we're not going to reduce it too much because we don't want the background to be too dark. Okay, so I'm just going to reduce it to about 0.7. So now I'm going to turn on this sun setting for now. The reason why I'm turning this on for now is just temporary. So I'm going to catch nowhere. I'm going to catch the shadows. So I'm just going to hit it from somewhere here. Okay, let me just try and rotate it again. Rotate it more. Okay, somewhere here. Okay, I think this is good. Now I can now turn it off. So now I've turned it off. I noticed that this dot is now looking too dark in this view. So I'm going to click on I. I'm going to select this and I'm going to make it whiter again, so it will come out as I intended. So now I'm just going to make sure I save this view. So now I'm just going to go back to environment. So I'm going to continue working on this end. So I'm going to make it towards the cooler end. I'm going to make it cool. I'm going to, okay, the sun is already turned off. So now I could go under this precipitation. I could turn on this precipitation, but I don't want it to be raining. I'm going to reduce the strength of this. Then I'm now going to reduce this puddle effect to just give it this rain. Okay, I'm going to reduce the puddle effect. So it's going to have this reflective effect on the ground. So about 0.35. My only issue with this puddle effect is also affects the roof, which is still okay. Then I'm going to go to the under this effect and I'm going to start working on this. I'm going to increase the contrast to about 0.006. Then the highlights, I'm going to increase the highlights. So the highlights, the white part will be more pronounced. I'm going to go over to this white balance and make it towards the cooler end, about 6200. I'm going to go to this tint and make it tint it to about 0.05. I'm going to go to this bloom amount and I'm going to increase the bloom very well to about 0.39. Okay, then I'm going to increase this vignette a bit, but not too much. Okay, then I'm going to go over and increase the saturation. Okay, everything is fine and good. We are going to click on this to update scene. So now we are going to work on some lights that we turned off. Firstly, we are going to turn off this LED light. So to do that, I'm going to click on P to exit this perspective view. Then I'm just going to select this and I'm just going to turn on this, go over here and turn on this emissive. So now once I've turned this emissive, you'll see all this LED light is on. The same thing, I'm going to do that for the headlamp of this car. So for instance, I'm going to reduce the speed of this camera movement so it won't be moving too fast. I'm going to click on this light here and I'm going to turn on the emissive. So now I've turned this emissive on, I'm going to increase the intensity. Then I'm going to change the color towards red. Then I'm going to increase the intensity to about 300. Click on OK. So you can see how the LED light is coming out well. So I'm also going to go to this SUV here and I'm going to try and turn on the LED light, so the headlamp. So I'm going to reduce the speed to enter this. Then once I click on this, I'm going to select this and I'm going to increase the emissiveness intensity. There, as you can see, this light is coming out well. Then I'm going to go back to this setting and we're going to see all we've done. So now for when I'm doing ambient view, I usually like doing some kind of highlights. So for this highlight, I'm going to click on P. I'm going to just put a bollard light behind the camera shot. So by doing this, I'm going to lit up the place around the camera shot. So let me first increase the speed of this. Then I'm just going to click on this and hold shift to just put some accent light around this region where we are taking our camera shots from. Then I'm just going to go back to this view and I'm going to see what we've done. I'm going to bring it closer. It's not doing its job well. Click on P. I'm going to bring it closer. Then I'm going to click on this camera shot again. Alright, so as you can see, you could see what we've done. We could also click on this light here and just drag it more. We could also even copy this bollard light to this point. Okay, I think everything is enough now. So you could see all the light settings. You could see how good this is looking. We could also go to this environment, adjust the position of this sun so it won't be too heavy here. Let me just change it just a bit. Okay, somewhere here. I think here is just good. Then I'm just going to update it. Then once we are done with this, we're just going to go over to render and we're just going to click on render. So now instead of this, we're going to change it to classical duplex ambient. Okay, hold on. I just have to click cancel first. I noticed an issue. I forgot to turn on these settings. They adjust the size of the render. So I'm just going to change this to 3.5K so it will be a quality image. And honestly, I'm just having a skeptical mind on these precipitations, because if I turn it off, for instance, I will actually prefer if this roof doesn't have any of those precipitation effects. The only thing I could do is maybe I could increase the reflectivity of the floor. So to do that, I'm just going to exit this. I'm just going to save this first, update the scene, exit this rendering interface, click on I, select this floor, increase the specularness a bit so the floor will be more reflective. Then go back to this render and let's see how we are going to render this. So now we are just going to click and make sure we change the setting to 3.5K. Then I'm just going to click, okay, this is too much, 3,500. File render 16K. Then I'm just going to click on render. Then I'm going to change this to from daylight to ambient. Alright, so now the render is complete. We're just going to click on open folder and we're going to just click on it and just see how the render is looking. So let's just drag this to this point. So as you can see, this is the ambient scene of the render. You could see before we go into post-production, I just want to render some quick animations and just show how to create animations in D5 render, because it's one of the most integral aspect of D5 render. So I think after that we'll now go into the post-production of these renders. So now I'm going to exit this rendering interface of D5. Then I'm going to go to the animation interface of D5. So D5 render has made animation easier basically. So for instance, let's just go over to this movement and we're going to reduce the speed. So let's just zoom back first. So let's say we have this scene, for instance. So we're just going to go to this environment. We're going to make sure that every animation effect is set. We're going to turn on this wind and we're going to increase the strength so the buildings will be animated. So we now go over here and we just go under this effect. So now if you go to this animation interface, we're going to go over this template tab. So this template tab, we're just going to use this horizontal push and we're going to click on it. So this is already a preset animation movement. Okay, to put the time frame, we're just going to go over here. We're going to click on this and we're just going to impute the value. Then I'm just going to click on play. So as you can see, this is an animation in D5 render, but we could still work on some more things on this animation. Firstly, we want to animate an object. To animate an object, for instance, we want to animate these birds flying. We're just going to go over to this timeline here. We're going to drag this blue line representing the timeline. Then once we've dragged it back to the beginning, we're going to go over there and select this group of birds. Then we're going to go over here and turn off these add keyframes here, and we're going to turn off this rate matching. And now we're going to just carry this blue line to the end of the timeline. Then we're now going to push these birds to displace these birds to another location. Then we're just going to add another keyframe. Okay, so now we are just going to play it and you're going to see the birds flying. We could also do this for a human being. Let's say we exit this animation interface and we go over to assets. Under this asset, we are going to go to characters, model. We are going to look for characters here. So I think this is character. So under characters, we are going to look for anybody walking. Let's just look for walking. Search walking. So we're going to find characters that are walking. So we'll just click on it and click enter. So now we have all the characters walking are virtually pro, but okay, let's use this Betty walking. So now we're just going to place the Betty walking here. Then we're going to close this. Then we're going to go back to this animation interface. So now in this animation interface, we're just going to click on this Betty here. We're going to try and select it, zoom in. If the model is not selected, you could shift and just click on this. Okay, now is selectable. Then we're just going to click on this add keyframe, click on rate matching. Then we're going to drag this timeline to the end of the video. Then we're just going to move the displace the Betty. Then we're just going to add this keyframe here. Then now we are going to play the animation. So as you can see, the lady is walking now. Now to render this simple animation we've just created, we're just going to go to resolution. We're going to change this from resolution. You could change this as high as 4K, but let's just change it to, let's just try 2K. Then we are just going to click on render. Okay, before we render this, let me just click cancel. You could also add renders in batches. So let's say we want to render 2 clips at once and in synergy in D5, like render them together. I'm just going to go over to this tab and I'm going to go to click on add render to queue. So once I've done that, I could go over here and create another clip. So in this clip, I'm going to be going to this daylight view. So under this daylight view, I'm now going to pick clip 2. So now I've gone back to this daylight view. You could see this clip 2 is empty once I click on it. Note that you could create animation on your own. This template is just D5 way of making things easier. But for this view now, let's just create an animation on our own. So we're going to zoom back now. And in this animation clip, I want to create an orbital animation. So I'm just going to click on this movement. I'm going to change this from fly to orbit because we want to create a kind of orbital animation. So I'm just going to click on add current view clip. So now I've added this current view clip. This is the first keyframe. So now I'm now going to hold right click and just hold this. Okay, let me just right click to this point and animate it somewhere over here and just orbit it. Then I'm just going to click on this, add another keyframe here. So now I'm not going to set the time interval between these two animations to, let's say, 5 seconds. So now I'm just going to play it. So as you can see, we have just animated this. So now before we do that, we forgot something. We're going to click on this clip now. We're going to go to environment and we're going to make sure this our wind setting is on so the vegetation can animate. We're also going to update it once we've effected these changes. We're going to go to this second scene too. We're going to make sure we check this wind. We're going to increase the strength and we're going to update this scene. So if we play it now, you are going to see that the wind is actually animating. Okay, so now we are done with the wind. Now we want to do some things. You know that in animation you could actually animate the environmental setting. Let's just say we want to create some nice shadowy animation effect. Now we're going to drag this to the end of this. We're going to click on this second keyframe here. So now once I click on this, I'm going to go back to this environment. So under this environment, I'm going to change this rotation and I'm going to change the rotation, like the position of this HDRI. So once I change this to, let me say, I'm going to change it to 320 degrees and I'm just going to update it. You're going to see that once I play this animation, you're going to see the HDRI change and the HDRI movement. Okay, I think I overdid it. So let me just go back to this, go back to environment, and I'm just going to change it towards this. Okay, I think 340 is enough. So I'm just going to play it and you're going to just see the effect. It's slow, but you could see the subtle effect. So now let's animate this woman, this Betty here. We're going to click on this, try and click on this model. If it's not clicking, we zoom in closer and we click on zoom in closer as well, click on this. So now we're going to turn on this add keyframe. We're going to click on this add rate matching or turn off this rate matching setting. Then we're going to drag this timeline to the end. We're now going to drag the position of this lady and we're just going to click on this and add another keyframe. Now we are going to play the animation. So as you can see, let's just still animate these birds in the same fashion. So you are going to drag this back. Okay, then we're going to click on this bird here. So once we've clicked on this bird, we will make sure this blue line is at the beginning of the timeline. We're going to check this add keyframe, turn on this rate matching, drag this to the end, move the birds and add another keyframe. Then we're just going to play it and we're going to see the birds flying. Okay, you could increase the speed of the birds because we want these birds to move faster. So let's just go to the we'll go to this end of this keyframe, the end of the timeline. We're going to select the birds and we're going to increase the distance. It means at the end of this video, these birds will be at this distance, and more distance you cover in a shorter time, the faster you are. So that is just the simple logic between this animation movement or animating object. So we're just going to place it, and we couldn't even see the birds because they move too fast. So now, as we did before, we're going to add this to the render queue, so we're going to add it to the set of renders. We're going to save this project. I think this is the final time. Then we're going to go under this render queue. Now under this render queue, we are now going to click on all. So once we click on this, it's going to select these two clips, and we're now going to set where we want to locate it. So now I'm going to go under this classical render, and I'm going to create a new folder called animation. Set it here. Then I'm going to click on select folder. So now the thing will give us option to automatically close D5 after rendering finishes. So I'm going to check it on because I want to close D5. Then I'm going to click render. So it's going to save the project for you. Then it's going to render the animation. So meet you right back. Alright, so now the animation is done. Let's just look at these two animation clips and see. So as you can see, you could see the first animation. You could now try out the second one and see. So you could see this what D5 render can do. Like D5 render can easily give you a top-notch animation. You can see in a few minutes we just created this animation. If you are using other rendering softwares or other modeling software, you could see how difficult it is to create animation, but D5 gives you this quality now in a short period of time. So now let's just do some post-production for these images. So we're going to go to these photos where we kept the photos. So we're just going to click and we're going to right click and we're going to open with Photoshop. Alright, so now we're in Photoshop. We're just going to go under this filter here. We're going to go to camera raw filter. So what we're going to be doing in this camera raw filter is we're just going to be tweaking some of the already existing effects. So once we click on camera raw filter, this panel is going to come up. So we're going to have some basic and some complex parameters. So we're going to start from the basics. I think we're going to reduce this temperature just a bit, just by -1. We are going to increase the tint just a bit, +2. We are going to reduce the exposure by just a bit, -0.05, just a bit. The contrast is okay, the highlight is okay. Okay, we are just going to reduce the highlight just a bit. The shadows, we are going to make the shadows darker a bit. Okay, so I think while the black is okay, this texture, we are just going to increase the texture. We are going to increase the clarity just a bit. We are going to increase the vibrance a bit. You see, I'm just careful while I'm touching this setting, so I won't just overdo too much. Let me reduce this clarity. So now I'm going to go to these details. Under these details, I'm going to increase the sharpen to about 40 or 30 something. Then I'm just going to increase the noise reduction. So once I'm done with this, I'm just going to click. You could zoom in and you could see how it's looking. So now you could just click on this toggle here to check the old settings and the updated settings. So I'm just going to click OK. So I think this is looking better. I'm going to hit Ctrl S to save the image. So this image is looking much more refined. So now I'm just going to close this. Okay, so now I'm also going to do the same for this. I'm going to right click, open with Photoshop. So now when I've opened this, I'm going to go under this filter layer. I'm going to go to camera raw filter. So under this camera raw filter, I'm going to start editing some settings for this ambient. So I'm going to be going to the basics. I think the temperature is fine. I'm going to increase the tint a bit. The exposure is too much for an ambient view. I'm going to drop it a bit by 0.10. The contrast is okay. The shadows, I think the shadows may be a bit too dark, so I'm going to brighten it up just a bit. The texture, I'm just going to increase the texture so it will have more texture. I'm going to increase the clarity a bit. The vibrance, I'm going to touch it just 0.02. Then I'm going to go over to details. Then I'm going to increase the sharpen to about 36. Then the noise reduction. Then I'm going to click OK. Then I'm just going to save it. And now I'm going to close Photoshop. So now we're going to try and open this image again. So as you can see, this is our final product for this tutorial. You can see where we started from. We started from absolutely nothing. We started from just a raw model and we were able to achieve this. You could see the ambient view. You could see the daylight view. Very beautiful stuff. So this is what D5 can do. D5 can give you realistic images in a short period of time and also realistic animations. So if this video was helpful, make sure you hit the like button. Subscribe to our channel for more content like this because we do this on a weekly basis. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to get notified once we release new videos. Thank you once again and enjoy your holidays.